History is not just the loud story of kings and battles. It is also the quiet, almost forgotten whisper of secrets waiting in the shadows. These are the tales of sleepy history, the overlooked corners of our past that hold the most tantalizing mysteries. Entire civilizations have vanished without a clear trace. Advanced technologies appear where they should not exist. By the end of this journey, you will see the ancient world through an entirely new lens, questioning what you thought you knew about human history. How did a society build a perfect astronomical computer over 2,000 years ago? Why would a thriving colony simply disappear, leaving only a single cryptic word behind? What forgotten truths are still buried, waiting to be uncovered? What part of the past do you feel is still calling out to be remembered? One name echoes louder than any other in the realm of ancient mysteries, a single word that conjures images of glistening spires swallowed by the sea. That name is Atlantis. The story begins with the Greek philosopher Plato over 2,000 years ago. He did not present it as a fable, but as a true account of a mighty naval power that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of misfortune. He described a circular city of concentric rings, rich in precious metals and advanced beyond its time, a society that grew arrogant and was punished by the gods. This was not a lengthy history, but a brief, powerful sketch that left everything to our imagination, and we have been trying to fill in the blanks ever since. The search for its real-world location has taken explorers from the sun-baked islands of the Mediterranean, where the volcanic eruption of Thera devastated the Minoan civilization, to the far side of the world in the Caribbean, where unusual underwater formations sparked debate. Some look to the mud flats of southern Spain, while others point to the Azores in the mid-Atlantic, searching for any geological clue that matches Plato's description. Why does this legend hold such a powerful grip on us century after century? Perhaps it is the haunting idea of a magnificent achievement completely erased, a reminder of our own fragility. Or maybe it is the tantalizing possibility that a golden age of humanity once existed, its knowledge now lost to the deep. Every sonar sweep of the ocean floor, every reinterpretation of an ancient map, is driven by the hope of answering that one compelling question. What if it was not just a story? What if a great civilization really is sleeping beneath the sand and the sea, waiting for its story to be told once more? Far from the ocean's depths, another mystery lies baked into the dry plains of Peru. Here, the Nazca Desert holds a gallery of enormous artwork, but it is a gallery you cannot see from the ground. Stretching across hundreds of square miles are vast lines and shapes, some forming geometric patterns, others creating the clear forms of a hummingbird, a spider, and even a monkey. These geoglyphs are so massive that their full form is only revealed from high above, a fact that lies at the very heart of their enduring mystery. How, and more importantly why, did an ancient people create art they could never hope to see for themselves? The most widely accepted theory suggests they were sacred pathways used for religious processions, a form of walking prayer to plead with the gods for water in an unforgiving landscape. Others argue they functioned as a complex astronomical calendar, with the lines pointing to celestial events like solstices crucial for planting and harvesting. Then there are the more speculative ideas, the whispers that capture our imagination. Could these lines have been landing strips or navigational beacons for visitors from other worlds? The sheer scale and precision required to create these figures is staggering. The Nazca people did it by simply removing the dark, sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored sand beneath, a technique that has preserved their work for over 2,000 years. They worked without the ability to fly, without modern tools, guided only by their knowledge and a purpose we are still trying to comprehend. Were they messages to the gods, or were they perhaps maps for something else entirely? Each theory offers a different window into the mind of a vanished culture, a people who looked to the sky and left their mark on the earth in a way that still speaks to us across the centuries. While the desert holds its messages in plain sight, another secret is locked away inside a book. The Voynich Manuscript is a small, unassuming codex from the 15th century, but it contains a mystery that has defied every expert for hundreds of years. Its pages are filled with strange, fluid handwriting in an alphabet that does not match any known language. Alongside the text are bizarre and beautiful illustrations of plants that do not exist on Earth, intricate astrological charts showing unknown constellations, and drawings of tiny, naked women bathing in a system of green, interconnected pipes. The very nature of its contents is a riddle. Who created this book and for what possible purpose? The leading theory suggests it could be a written record of a now extinct language, a cultural snapshot completely lost to time. Others argue it is an incredibly complex cipher, a code meant to protect valuable alchemical or herbal knowledge from falling into the wrong hands. Then there is the possibility that it is an elaborate medieval hoax crafted to deceive a wealthy patron, its seemingly meaningful text nothing but clever nonsense. Modern codebreakers, including teams from the world's top intelligence agencies, have applied their most advanced methods to the manuscript. They have found patterns that suggest a real language with word structures and repetition that feel intentional, yet the meaning remains stubbornly out of reach. It sits in a university library today, a quiet, physical object that holds a silent conversation with everyone who sees it. Is it a forgotten science, a lost art, or a magnificent fraud? The book offers no answers, only the haunting whisper of a puzzle that someone long ago believed was worth preserving. The silent pages of the Voynich Manuscript guard their secret, but another ancient object pulled from the sea speaks a language of pure mechanics we are only just beginning to understand. In the quiet of a museum in Athens rests the Antikythera Mechanism, a corroded lump of bronze and wood that is arguably the most stunning artifact ever recovered from the ancient world. It was discovered more than a century ago in a Roman shipwreck off the coast of a tiny Greek island, and for decades it was dismissed as a curious but unremarkable find. Then researchers began to look closer, peering inside the fractured stone-like casing with advanced imaging technology. What they found was breathtaking. This was not a statue or a simple tool. It was a complex machine, a precise clockwork of interlocking bronze gears, some with fine teeth smaller than a grain of rice. It was, in essence, an analog computer crafted over 2,000 years ago. This intricate device was a cosmic prediction engine. By turning a hand crank on its side, the user could set a date, and the gears would whir into motion, calculating the positions of the sun, the moon, and the known planets. It could predict lunar and solar eclipses, and it even modeled the irregular orbit of the moon, a subtlety of astronomy that we would not expect an ancient civilization to grasp, let alone mechanize. The front dial displayed a sophisticated zodiac calendar, while the back featured cycles used to time major athletic games like the ancient Olympics. To see a detailed animation of its gears turning in perfect, synchronized harmony is to watch the ancient Greek understanding of the cosmos made physical. It was a portable universe made of bronze. The implications of this single device are profound. It forces us to completely reconsider the technological capabilities of the ancient world. This level of mechanical sophistication was not thought to exist until the mechanical clocks of the 14th century in Europe. The Antikythera Mechanism predates those by more than a millennium. Who were the geniuses who designed it? What knowledge was lost when the ship carrying it sank to the bottom of the Mediterranean? This was not a one-off experiment. It hints at a tradition of advanced Greek engineering, a school of thought that understood the heavens through mathematics and metal. This one artifact shatters the simple timeline of human progress, suggesting a peak of technological achievement that was forgotten for centuries, sleeping in the deep until the sea chose to give it back. The same sea that concealed the Antikythera Mechanism also guards the shores of a desert where an even older mystery stands in plain sight. The Great Pyramids of Giza are so familiar that we often forget how deeply strange they truly are. These are not just piles of stone, they are mountains crafted by human hands with a precision that defies easy explanation. Consider the Great Pyramid of Khufu, a structure composed of over 2 million blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. The base is a near-perfect square, with sides aligned to the 4 cardinal directions with an error of less than 1/15 of a degree. How did an ancient society achieve such staggering accuracy without modern tools or even the wheel? The quarries, the transportation, the logistics, all of it remains a subject of fierce debate. Were they using ramps that coiled around the rising structure, or did they employ a lost method for softening and molding stone? The sheer scale of the labor is incomprehensible, suggesting a knowledge of engineering and project management that seems to belong to a much later age. But the mysteries only deepen when you look to the sky. The pyramids are not just aligned with the earth, they are mirroring the heavens. The 3 main pyramids are arranged to precisely match the 3 stars of Orion's belt as they appeared in 10,500 BCE. This was not a coincidence. For the ancient Egyptians, the constellation of Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of rebirth and the afterlife. The pyramids were more than tombs, they were colossal machines designed to launch the soul of the pharaoh directly into the cosmic cycle of death and regeneration. This celestial connection hints at a sophisticated astronomy, a lost science of measuring the stars that was encoded into the very landscape. For centuries, we believed we understood their internal structure, but the pyramids are still revealing their secrets. In recent years, scientists have used a revolutionary technique called muon tomography. This involves using cosmic rays, tiny particles that constantly rain down from space, to see through solid rock much like an X-ray sees through flesh. These scans have revealed something astonishing: large, previously unknown voids inside the Great Pyramid. These are not small cracks, but significant empty spaces deep within the monument, areas that no one has entered for over 4,000 years. What lies within these hidden chambers? Are they structural quirks, sealed off construction gaps, or could they hold artifacts, texts, or even the undisturbed burial chamber of the pharaoh himself? Each new scan, each new theory brings us back to the same haunting question. The pyramids stand as a silent testament to a knowledge that was so profound, so advanced that we are still struggling to comprehend the full extent of what the ancient builders knew. Yet even the pyramids were built by a society with written records. On the windswept Salisbury Plain in England stands a monument erected by a people who left no written language at all. Stonehenge is a ring of towering stones, some capped with massive lintels, and its silent presence has provoked endless questions. How could a prehistoric community without the wheel or metal tools accomplish such a thing? The first layer of the mystery lies in the stones themselves. The largest of them, the sarcens, weigh up to 50 tons and were dragged from quarries over 20 miles away. But the smaller, inner bluestones tell an even more incredible story. Geological analysis reveals they came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a distance of over 150 miles. How did they make that journey? The most accepted theory suggests they were hauled on wooden sledges and rollers, then possibly carried part of the way on rafts along the Welsh coast and up rivers, a monumental logistical effort that must have taken generations. This was not a random act, it was a deliberate, centuries-long project of profound importance. But for what? The leading theories are as varied as they are compelling. For a long time, it was seen primarily as a vast burial ground, with the cremated remains of many individuals found on the site, suggesting it was a place of the dead. Others propose it was a center of healing, a Neolithic Lourdes where the bluestones themselves were believed to have magical, curative properties. Then there is the astronomical argument. The entire structure is perfectly aligned with the movements of the sun. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel-stone and casts its light into the very heart of the stone circle. This was not just a calendar to mark the seasons, it was a celestial cathedral, a place where the earth and the sky were ritually joined. Was it one of these things, or was it all of them? A place of death, of healing, and of celestial wonder all at once, the stones do not say. They simply stand, a testament to a unified purpose and a shared vision that we can only glimpse from across a vast, silent gulf of time. But there is a region of the ocean where the very water seems to swallow the evidence, a place where modern vessels and aircraft have vanished from the map without a clear reason. In the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean lies the Bermuda Triangle, a loosely defined area between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico that has become a legend of the modern age. The lore began to solidify in the 20th century with a string of high-profile disappearances. The most famous of these is Flight 19, a squadron of 5 United States Navy bombers on a routine training mission in 1945. The experienced flight leader was heard over the radio reporting that his compasses were not working, that everything looked wrong, and that they could not be sure of their position. All 5 planes and their 14 crew members vanished without a trace. A massive search and rescue plane sent to find them also disappeared, adding to the mystery. Over the decades, other ships and planes have been added to the list, each disappearance stripping away a little more rational explanation and feeding the myth of a supernatural zone. So what truly happens in this stretch of sea? Scientific inquiry offers several compelling, if less sensational, answers. One leading theory involves methane hydrates, vast deposits of gas trapped in ice like crystals on the ocean floor. A sudden landslide or temperature change could release an enormous bubble of methane, rising to the surface and drastically reducing the density of the water. A ship caught above such a plume would lose its buoyancy instantly and sink without warning. For aircraft, the erupting methane could enter the atmosphere, creating a highly turbulent and combustible air pocket that could stall engines or cause a catastrophic explosion. Another powerful explanation is the phenomenon of rogue waves. These are not just large waves, they are solitary walls of water that can appear suddenly and reach heights of 100 feet or more. In the open ocean, such a wave could easily overwhelm even a large ship, breaking it apart before a distress call could be completed. The Bermuda Triangle is also situated in a region known for unpredictable and violent weather, and for being one of the few places on Earth where a magnetic compass points to true north rather than magnetic north, a navigational quirk that could have confused pilots before the advent of modern GPS. Yet for all the science, the more supernatural theories persist with a powerful allure. Some speak of temporal vortices, gateways to other times or dimensions. Others point to the lost city of Atlantis, suggesting its fabled power crystals lie on the seabed, interfering with instruments and drawing vessels to their doom. The United States government does not recognize the triangle as a more hazardous area than any other part of the ocean, and statistical analysis shows the rate of disappearances is not unusually high given the volume of ship and air traffic that passes through it. So why does the legend endure so powerfully? Perhaps it is a modern echo of ancient sea monster myths, a way to give a name and a face to the terrifying, indifferent power of the natural world. The ocean is vast and deep and fundamentally unknown. The Bermuda Triangle gives that unknown a location on a map, a place where our rational world meets the enduring human need for a mystery. The ocean has always held a power to erase, to make things vanish without a trace, yet sometimes it chooses to leave the evidence behind. In December of 1872, a ship named the Mary Celeste was spotted drifting silently in the Atlantic. When the crew of the Day Gracia boarded her, they found a scene of profound and unsettling normalcy. The ship was seaworthy, its cargo of industrial alcohol largely intact. A meal was set out on the table as if waiting to be eaten. There were no signs of a struggle, no leaks and no fire. But the lifeboat was gone, and the entire crew of 10 people, along with the captain's wife and 2-year-old daughter, had simply disappeared. They were never seen or heard from again. This was not a wreck. It was an abandoned vessel, a perfect mystery floating in the middle of the sea. So what could have driven a seasoned captain and his crew to hastily launch a small boat into the open ocean, leaving behind a perfectly sound ship? The official inquiry at the time suspected mutiny or piracy, but nothing was stolen, and the personal belongings of the crew were left undisturbed. A more plausible theory involves the cargo. Those barrels of alcohol could have leaked, building up fumes that the crew feared might explode at any moment. In a panic, they might have evacuated, only to watch in horror as the expected explosion never came, leaving them adrift in a small boat that was then lost to the waves. Others point to the sea itself. A waterspout or a small, localized seaquake could have shaken the ship violently, causing the crew to believe it was sinking. They might have abandoned ship only for the merry Celeste to right itself and sail on, forever out of their reach. Then there are the whispers, the more outlandish tales spun to fill the silence. Stories of giant squid attacks, of sea monsters rising from the deep, or even of paranormal abductions into some strange fog or another dimension. These ideas capture our imagination precisely because the logical explanations, while sensible, feel incomplete. They do not fully explain the profound stillness of that found ship, the untouched meal, the eerie feeling that its occupants had just stepped away a moment before. The Merry Celeste is a ghost story rooted in fact, a tangible reminder that the greatest mysteries are not always about what was lost, but about the quiet, unanswered questions left floating in their wake. A ghost settlement stands empty in the New World, a place where an entire community was simply erased. In 1587, a supply ship from England finally reached the shores of Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. The crew was expecting to find a thriving village of over 100 men, women, and children, including the first English child born in the Americas, a baby girl named Virginia Dare. Instead, they found absolute silence. The settlement was deserted, the houses dismantled in an orderly way, with no signs of a struggle or battle. The only clue was a single word carved into a wooden post, Croatoan, and another, the letters CRO, carved into a nearby tree. There was no cross, the prearranged signal for distress, which meant their departure was likely planned. So where did they go? The word itself points to a nearby island, Croatoan, which was the home of a friendly Native American tribe, the Hatteras. The most compelling theory is that the colonists, facing starvation and desperate conditions, chose to integrate with this local community. They may have been gradually absorbed, their English ways and language fading over generations into the fabric of a new culture. Some stories from later English settlers speak of gray-eyed natives or tribesmen who could speak a little English, whispers of a possible integration. Other theories are far darker. Perhaps a terrible disease swept through the colony, or they were attacked by a hostile tribe with a few survivors taken captive and scattered. The single word could have been a desperate, unfinished message pointing toward their captors or their fate. The mystery of the lost colony endures as America's oldest missing persons case, a foundational ghost story. It is a quiet, human-sized tragedy that asks a haunting question about the nature of survival. Did they vanish, or did they simply choose to disappear into the land itself, leaving their old world behind to become part of a new one? The post and the tree have long since turned to dust, but the word they carried still hangs in the air, a question mark at the very beginning of American history. While the fate of the Roanoke colonists remains a human puzzle, another artifact presents a mystery of a different kind, one that is both physical and deeply spiritual. In a cathedral in Turin, Italy, a simple piece of linen is kept under lock and key. This is the Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot-long cloth that bears the faint, straw-colored image of a bearded man. His body shows the unmistakable signs of trauma, from wounds on his head that could be from a crown of thorns to lacerations on his back and a piercing in his side. Most strikingly, the image reveals what appears to be blood flow from the wrists and feet, consistent with the Roman practice of crucifixion. For millions of the faithful, this is not just an ancient textile, it is the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ, a tangible relic of the resurrection. The image was not painted on, but seems to be a scorch-like imprint, a phenomenon science has struggled to explain. The debate over its authenticity, however, reached a fever pitch in the late 1980s. With the permission of the Vatican, a small sample of the shroud was carefully cut and sent to 3 independent laboratories in Oxford, Zurich, and Tucson for radiocarbon dating. The results, announced in 1988, sent shockwaves through the world. The tests dated the linen to between 1260 and 1390, a time squarely in the Middle Ages. To many, this was definitive proof that the shroud was a medieval forgery, a masterful creation meant to deceive pilgrims, yet for others the mystery only deepened. Skeptics of the carbon dating point to a potential contamination event. In 1532, the chapel in Chambéry, France, where the shroud was kept, suffered a devastating fire. The cloth was nearly destroyed, saved only when doused with water, which could have introduced carbon from the smoke, or the later repairs by nuns effectively reset the cloth's carbon clock. Other scientific analyses complicate the picture further. Pollen grains found embedded in the shroud have been identified as species native solely to the area around Jerusalem. Forensic pathologists state the anatomical precision of the wounds is medically accurate in a way a medieval artist would have had no way of knowing. The image itself resides only on the very topmost fibers of the thread, with no capillary action that would be present if it were created with a liquid pigment. So what are we to make of this enigmatic cloth? Is it an elaborate and ingenious fraud from the 14th century, a work of such inexplicable artistry that it continues to baffle modern analysis? Or is it a genuine archaeological object from 1st century Judea, its carbon dating compromised by a fire 800 years ago? The shroud sits at the perfect intersection of faith and science, a single piece of fabric that asks one of the most profound questions possible. Can a moment of divine mystery leave a physical trace behind for us to find? Deep within the shadowy corners of museums and private collections, objects of impossible clarity and chilling perfection have long captured the public imagination. They are the crystal skulls, human skulls carved from single blocks of flawless quartz, their surfaces polished to a supernatural gleam. When they first began appearing in the 19th century, they were presented as relics of ancient Mesoamerican cultures, artifacts from the Aztecs or the Maya. The legends that grew around them were as brilliant as the crystal itself. Some were said to possess strange powers, able to show visions of the future, to heal the sick, or to hold the secret knowledge of a lost world. One particularly famous story claimed that 13 such skulls existed, and if they were ever brought together, they would reveal profound secrets about humanity's past and future. It was a compelling narrative, a tangible piece of magic from a romanticized ancient world. Yet, the very perfection of these objects was the first clue to a different truth. The skulls were almost too flawless, their features too symmetrical, their craftsmanship suspiciously modern. As they came under the scrutiny of science, the romantic tale began to fracture. Researchers used advanced microscopy to examine the surfaces of the most famous skulls, like the one housed in the British Museum. They were looking for the telltale marks of ancient tools. What they found was definitive. The quartz was carved using rotating wheels coated with abrasive compounds, a technology developed in 19th century Europe. There were no scratches or gouges consistent with hand tools like stone chisels or water-powered sanding, methods that would have been available to pre-Columbian artisans. The crystal itself, once analyzed, was often traced to sources in Brazil or Madagascar, regions far outside the trade networks of ancient Mesoamerica. The evidence points overwhelmingly to a single, prosaic origin. These were clever fakes, manufactured in German workshops in the late 1800s, designed specifically to feed a growing European and American fascination with the exotic and the occult. They were sold to wealthy collectors and museums as genuine antiquities, a lucrative trade in manufactured mystery. So why does their allure persist even after the science has spoken? Perhaps because they represent a different kind of mystery, not of ancient gods, but of human desire. They are a mirror held up to our own longing for a world filled with magic and lost wisdom, a testament to our endless capacity to be enchanted by a beautiful story, even when we know it is carved from a lie. On a remote speck of land in the vast Pacific, giants stand with their backs to the sea. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is home to nearly 1,000 massive stone figures, the moai, their heavy-lidded gazes fixed eternally inland. These are not merely heads, but full-body statues, some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons, all carved from compressed volcanic ash. The silence that surrounds them today is a stark contrast to the vibrant, complex society that once flourished here. The Rapa Nui people were master navigators who found this island after an epic sea voyage, and they built a unique culture that expressed its identity through these awe-inspiring monuments. Each moai was a representation of a powerful ancestor, believed to hold spiritual power or mana, watching over the clan and ensuring its prosperity. The quarry at Roanoke, a volcanic crater, was the island's sacred workshop. Here, the moai were carved directly from the bedrock, the mountain itself gradually transforming into a landscape of half-finished giants. Once a statue was freed, it was carefully lowered down the slopes, ready for its journey across the island. This journey is the heart of the mystery. How did a people without wheels, without draft animals, without metal, move these colossal weights for miles across rolling hills? For a long time, the dominant theory involved log rollers and sledges. The idea was that the Rapa Nui felled the island's palm trees to create a track, painstakingly pulling the moai on a wooden sled. This theory, however, contributed to a darker narrative, a story of ecological collapse. It was said the people recklessly deforested their own paradise to feed their statue-building obsession, leading to erosion, famine, and a horrific societal collapse. But newer evidence and bold experiments have challenged this grim tale. A compelling alternative suggests the moai were not dragged at all, but walked. Researchers have demonstrated that with 3 teams of ropes, one team can rock a large replica statue from side to side, while the other teams keep it steady and pull it forward. To an observer, the statue appears to sway or walk its way across the landscape, a method that would require far fewer people and resources than log rolling. This walking theory paints a different picture of the Rapa Nui, not as ecologically blind fanatics, but as ingenious engineers who found an elegant solution to a monumental problem. So what truly happened to their society? The story is likely more complex than a simple ecocide. The arrival of European explorers brought new diseases and slave raiding, devastating the population. Introduced rats may have eaten the seeds of the native palms, preventing the forests from regrowing. The real collapse was probably a tragic combination of internal pressures and external shocks. The moai stand today as silent witnesses to this history. Their toppled forms a testament not just to a possible civil war, but to the resilience of the human spirit. They are a powerful reminder of both our capacity to create breathtaking beauty and the fragility of the world we build. Hidden within a museum basement in Baghdad lies a collection of clay jars that challenge our entire timeline of human invention. These unassuming artifacts, dated to the Parthian period around 2,000 years ago, consist of a simple terracotta pot, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod. If you were to fill one with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, something remarkable happens. It becomes a basic battery capable of generating a small but measurable electric current. This is the Baghdad Battery, and its existence asks a startling question. Did an ancient civilization stumble upon the principles of electricity long before it was formally discovered in the modern era? The theory that these were power sources is compelling. The setup is chemically perfect. The acidic electrolyte would react with the iron rod and the copper cylinder, creating a potential difference of about 1 volt between the two metals. While a single jar would produce only a faint tingle, connecting several together in a series, a battery bank could have generated enough power for a specific practical task. The most cited possibility is electroplating, the process of using electricity to coat a base metal with a thin layer of a precious metal like gold. Artisans could have suspended a small silver statue in a solution of gold salts, connected it to their clay jar batteries, and slowly deposited a shimmering layer of gold onto the object. This would explain the existence of exquisitely gilded ancient artifacts that show no hammer marks, their coatings mysteriously uniform. Another intriguing idea is that this gentle current was used for medical or religious purposes. A person holding the two terminals might feel a strange vibration, a numbing sensation that could have been interpreted as a divine touch or a healing power. Imagine a priest in a darkened temple using this hidden knowledge to produce miracles, making a metal idol seem to glow or administering a startling jolt to a supplicant's body. Yet, many archaeologists remain deeply skeptical, arguing for a much more mundane explanation. The primary counter-theory is that these were simply secure containers for storing precious scrolls. The iron rod could have been a spindle around which a papyrus or parchment was rolled, and the entire assembly was then sealed inside the copper cylinder and placed in the jar for protection. The fact that no wires or connectors were found with the jars is a significant point against the electrical theory. If they were batteries, where is the evidence of the circuit? The debate is a perfect clash of perspectives. One side sees ingenious technology, a spark of knowledge that was lit and then lost for centuries. The other sees a practical storage solution, its true purpose obscured by our own modern assumptions. Perhaps the most fascinating possibility is that the jars served both purposes. A scribe might have stored his scrolls in the cylinder, never realizing that the damp, acidic environment of the sealed pot was slowly generating a forgotten power all around them. The truth is, we may never know for certain. These quiet clay pots hold their secret, leaving us to wonder if the ancient world was far more electrifying than we ever dared to dream. A world map drawn in 1513 should not show what it does. In the Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul rests the Piri Reis map, a fragment of a larger world chart compiled by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. He wrote that he used 20 source maps, including some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, to create this comprehensive view of the known world. The map accurately depicts the coastlines of Western Africa, Eastern South America, and even islands in the Atlantic, but its southern edge presents a geographical puzzle that seems to defy history. There, below the Atlantic Ocean, lies a landmass with detailed, accurate coastlines that many argue is Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered for another 300 years. This alone is startling, but the real mystery is the condition of this southern land. The map shows it not as a solid, icy cap, but with what appear to be ice-free coastlines, rivers, and mountains. Modern seismic surveys have revealed the true topography of Antarctica buried under miles of ice, and the shape on the Piri Reis map bears a striking, some say unnerving, resemblance to that hidden coastline. How could a 16th century cartographer have mapped a continent that would be invisible to the human eye for centuries? The most straightforward explanation is that the landmass is not Antarctica at all, but a speculative, composite sketch of a southern continent, a common cartographic practice of the era. It could be a distorted version of the South American coast, stretched and bent to fit the admiral's parchment. Perhaps the details are simply coincidence, the random result of ink on animal skin. Yet, for those who see a true representation, the implications are staggering. If it is Antarctica, the map must be based on source material from a time when the continent was free of ice. Geological evidence suggests the last time Antarctica was largely ice-free was millions of years ago, long before any known human civilization. This leads to a profound and controversial theory. Could the map be evidence of an incredibly ancient, advanced seafaring culture, a civilization with the knowledge and technology to map the entire globe in a prehistoric age? The maps Piri Reis cited, now lost to time, might have been copies of copies, preserving a forgotten geography from a world that existed before the ice claimed it. This knowledge could have been passed down through the great libraries of antiquity, like Alexandria, surviving just long enough to be incorporated into a Turkish admiral's project before vanishing once more. The Piri Reis map does not offer answers, only a silent, cartographic whisper from the past. It asks us to question the entire timeline of human exploration and to wonder what other forgotten truths might still be hidden in plain sight, waiting on a dusty library shelf for someone to understand their meaning. Among the fragile, ancient library of the Dead Sea Scrolls, one document stands entirely apart. While the others are written on parchment or papyrus, this one is etched onto rolls of beaten copper, a material meant to last for eternity. Known as the Copper Scroll, it contains no psalms, no prophecies, and no religious laws. Instead, it reads like a straightforward inventory from a divine treasure house, listing 64 different caches of gold and silver, with quantities described in tons, along with ritual vessels and other scrolls. According to its cryptic directions, this unimaginable wealth was hidden in caves, aqueducts, and burial tombs scattered across the Judean desert. The sheer scale of the treasure is baffling, its value estimated to be in the billions of dollars today. This immediately presents a fundamental question. Was this a literal, physical fortune, a secret map to the lost treasury of the Second Temple in Jerusalem? Or was it a purely symbolic text, a spiritual allegory for hidden wisdom? The literal interpretation has fueled real-world treasure hunts for decades. Expeditions have scoured the arid landscape following the scroll's peculiar directions. It speaks of a pillar with a cavity, a ruined gutter, and a northern entrance, landmarks that have either vanished or were never clear to begin with. These searches have been largely fruitless, turning up little more than dust and disappointment. The terrain has shifted over 2,000 years, and the clues, so precise on the metal, are infuriatingly vague on the ground. This repeated failure lends weight to the other theory, that the treasure was never meant to be dug up with shovels. Perhaps the copper was chosen for its permanence because the treasure it described was spiritual, not material. The gold and silver could represent the immeasurable value of divine knowledge, and the hiding places could be metaphors for the human heart or the soul's journey. The scroll might have been a sacred text for initiates, a coded guide to inner riches, its metal form ensuring the message would never decay. Yet, the very practicality of the copper creates a powerful tension. Why go to such extraordinary lengths using a difficult and expensive medium to record a purely metaphorical list? The act of inscribing on metal suggests a desperate need to preserve critical information against the ravages of time and war. Could the truth be a blend of both ideas? Perhaps the treasure was real, plundered or recovered long ago, but the scroll itself, by surviving, became the true treasure, a permanent symbol of faith and loss. Its cryptic words continue to whisper from the past, not telling us where the gold is, but asking us what we truly consider valuable. The sheer number of them is the first shock to the system. In the quiet countryside of Brittany, France, more than 3,000 prehistoric standing stones march across the landscape in dense, parallel rows. This is the Karnak alignment, a sprawling monument of granite sentinels that has guarded its secret for thousands of years. Unlike the arranged circle of Stonehenge, these stones are deployed like a vast army, forming lines that stretch for miles. Who raised them, and what monumental idea demanded such an overwhelming display of effort? The most enduring local legend provides a magical, if chilling, answer. It is said that these are the remains of a Roman legion, a marching column of soldiers who were turned to stone by the wizard Merlin. He petrified them to protect a local village, freezing them in their tracks for all eternity. It is a story that gives life to the stones, a narrative that makes the silent field feel like a captured moment in time. But science, of course, looks for a different kind of magic. One compelling theory suggests the stones functioned as an elaborate earthquake detector. The region sits on a network of ancient fault lines, and the way the stones are precisely positioned could have acted as a massive seismic antenna. The slightest tremor traveling through the ground would have caused the stones to vibrate or even knock against each other, creating an audible warning long before the main shock arrived. It was a prehistoric early warning system, a geological instrument built on a colossal scale. Yet another idea points to the sky, proposing the alignments were a sophisticated astronomical observatory. Certain rows appear to be aligned with the rising and setting of the sun and moon at key times of the year, like the solstices. The entire field might have been a complex calendar and a celestial temple, a place where the movements of the heavens were tracked and celebrated on the earth below. Could it have served all these purposes at once? A place of ritual that also watched the sky and listened to the rumblings of the earth. The stones themselves offer no confirmation, standing in their patient, endless rows. They are a reminder that our ancestors did not separate science from spirituality, but wove them together into a single understanding of a living, breathing world. We are left to walk among them, hearing only the wind where once there might have been the sound of chanting, or the faint, ominous click of stone against stone. Cut from the soft sandstone of China's Zhejiang province, a sprawling underground world lies in near-total silence. The Longyu Caves are not a simple series of holes, but a vast subterranean complex of 24 gigantic man-made caverns. The sheer scale of the excavation is almost beyond belief. Each cave is immense, with some chambers reaching the height of a 10-story building, supported by enormous, uniformly carved pillars that hold up the ceiling. The entire project required the removal of nearly 1 million cubic meters of stone, a volume of rubble so vast it defies comprehension. This was not a haphazard digging project, it was a monumental undertaking executed with breathtaking precision. Every single surface, from the soaring ceilings to the massive walls and pillars, is covered in a uniform, chiseled pattern of parallel lines. These markings are not random scratches, they are a masterclass in consistency, a swirling, artistic design etched with a steady hand across thousands upon thousands of square feet of rock. The pattern is identical from one chamber to the next, suggesting a single, guiding vision and a shared, sophisticated technique that was followed without deviation. Who could have possibly commanded the labor and skill for such an endeavor, and for what unimaginable purpose? The true mystery, however, is the deafening silence that surrounds them. A project of this magnitude should echo through the historical records of whatever dynasty built it. It would have required a workforce of thousands laboring for decades, an architectural plan of immense complexity, and a reason profound enough to justify such a staggering investment of time and resources. Yet there is nothing, no ancient text, no local folklore, no official chronicle, not even a single scrap of poetry ever mentions the construction of the Longyu Caves. It is as if a phantom civilization carved out a cathedral and then vanished without a whisper. The caves were completely flooded and forgotten until 1992, when local farmers pumped out the water from one of them, revealing the hidden grandeur. Were they a secret tomb for an emperor that never came to be, a hidden quarry for some forgotten city built above, or perhaps a sacred space, a ritual underworld designed for ceremonies we can no longer even conceive? The perfectly aligned chisel marks offer no clue, speaking a language of pure geometry that we see but cannot read. They stand as a silent testament to a lost chapter of human ambition, a project so vast it seems to have been erased from memory itself, waiting patiently in the dark for its purpose to be rediscovered. High above the modern city of Cusco, a fortress of stone defies both time and explanation. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are a breathtaking display of power and precision, a complex of zigzagging ramparts built from blocks so enormous they seem to have been placed by giants. The most famous of these stones is estimated to weigh over 300 tons, a piece of a mountain carefully lifted and fitted into a puzzle of staggering complexity. Yet it is not the size alone that baffles observers, but the breathtaking craftsmanship. Each polygonal stone was individually cut to fit perfectly against its neighbors in a seamless, interlocking pattern. The joints are so tight, so exact, that you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. This is dry stone construction at its most advanced, achieved without any mortar to fill the gaps. How did the Inca, a culture without the wheel, without iron tools, without even a written system of plans, accomplish such a feat? The official history credits the Inca with its construction in the 15th century, a monumental effort that supposedly took thousands of workers nearly a century to complete. They are said to have used harder stones to pound the andesite blocks into shape and earthen ramps to move them into position. But this explanation, while impressive, struggles to account for the sheer perfection of the fit. The stones are not simply stacked, they are woven together with complex angles and beveled edges that lock the entire wall into a single, cohesive unit, one that has withstood centuries of earthquakes that have toppled Spanish colonial buildings erected on top of them. This incredible resilience points to a profound understanding of seismic engineering, a design that allows the wall to shift and settle during a quake without collapsing. The perfection of these joints has led to a persistent alternative theory. Could Sacsayhuaman be far older than we believe? Some researchers point to the distinct difference in construction styles within the complex. The lower, Cyclopean walls display a level of stone fitting far superior to the rougher, smaller stonework found in the upper sections, which more clearly matches later Inca repairs and additions. This has fueled the idea that the Inca built upon a much older, pre-existing foundation, constructed by a forgotten culture with a lost technology for working stone. Were the Inca the brilliant architects, or were they the inheritors and restorers of a work so ancient its origins had faded into myth? The walls offer no written record, only the silent, immovable testimony of their own perfection, leaving us to wonder who truly mastered the language of stone. Across the Pacific, another triangle of vanished ships haunts the mariner's map. Off the eastern coast of Japan lies a place the locals call the Mano Yumi, the Devil's Sea. This stretch of water, swirling around the volcanic Izu Islands, has earned a grim reputation as the Pacific's twin to the Bermuda Triangle, a zone where vessels and planes have seemingly evaporated into the mist. The parallels are striking, a pattern of silent disappearances that defies easy logic. The legends woven into this region, however, are uniquely its own. For centuries, Japanese folklore has spoken of a restless dragon god dwelling in a shimmering palace at the seabed, his wrath stirred by those who dare to trespass upon his domain. Fishermen's tales tell of vengeful spirits, of sudden, unnatural fogs that swallow boats whole, leaving no wreckage behind to mourn. These are not just ghost stories, they are ancient attempts to explain a very real and terrifying power. The science behind the Devil's Sea points to a volatile and unforgiving environment. The area is a hotbed of undersea volcanic activity. The ocean floor is pocked with craters and seething vents, capable of releasing immense bubbles of volcanic gas without warning. A ship sailing over such an eruption would lose its buoyancy in an instant, plunging to the depths before a single distress call could be made. The same geological unrest churns the waters and whips the air into a frenzy, creating microstorms of devastating power that can appear and vanish on the radar in minutes. These are not the broad weather systems tracked for days by meteorologists, but sudden, violent outbursts of wind and wave that leave no time for escape. Could the same methane plumes thought to operate in the Atlantic also be at work here, bubbling up from the volcanic seabed to doom aircraft flying low over the waves? The combination creates a perfect storm of natural hazards, a recipe for disaster written in fire and water. The mystery lingers not because the forces are supernatural, but because they are so brutally efficient, erasing all evidence almost as soon as the tragedy begins. The Dragon's Palace, it seems, is built upon a foundation of geological fury. Another ancient object refuses to surrender its meaning, this one small enough to hold in your hands. The Phaistos disk is a simple circle of baked clay discovered in the Minoan palace of Phaistos on the island of Crete. Its face is covered on both sides with a swirling spiral of symbols, each one stamped into the clay with a seal. There are 45 distinct signs, from the shape of a human head to a walking man, a ship, a shield, and a beehive. This is not handwriting, it is printing, a fact that makes it stunningly unique. This object was created by pressing pre-made stamps into soft clay, a method of reproducing text that would not appear again for over 1,000 years. Yet, for all its technological foreshadowing, its message is utterly lost. The script it uses does not match any other known writing system from the ancient world. It is not the familiar linear A or linear B of the Minoans and Mycenaeans. It stands entirely alone, a solitary whisper in a language we cannot hear. This isolation is the core of the mystery. Who made these stamps and for what urgent purpose? Was this a royal decree, a religious hymn, or a simple inventory list? The very fact that they went to the trouble of creating a set of stamps suggests they intended to use this script repeatedly, yet no other example has ever been found. This single disc is the only one of its kind in existence. For over a century, the world's best linguists and amateur sleuths have tried to crack its code. Some argue the symbols represent syllables, others that they form a complete alphabet. Proposed translations have claimed it is everything from a prayer to a goddess to a narrative of a king's journey, yet none of these interpretations have gained widespread acceptance. The main reason for this failure is the disc's solitude. Without another text to compare it to, without a bilingual inscription to use as a key, there is no way to test any theory. It is like trying to solve a puzzle with no picture on the box and with half the pieces missing. Every attempt is just an educated guess. The disc sits in its museum case, a silent, circular argument. It tells us that a sophisticated people on Crete were experimenting with the very idea of printing, that they had a system of writing developed enough to require reusable type. And then that knowledge simply vanished. Was the disc a failed experiment, or was it a precious artifact from a culture that was wiped out before its language could spread? We may never know the story pressed into its clay, but its very existence reminds us that history is written not only in grand monuments, but in the small, stubborn objects that keep their secrets to themselves. Off the coast of Japan's westernmost island, the ocean floor holds a puzzle written in stone. The Yonaguni Monument is a massive, tiered sandstone structure discovered in the mid-1980s. Its flat surfaces, sharp edges, and seemingly perfect right angles plunging down to depths of over 80 feet. To many who have seen it, this is not a random act of geology, but the unmistakable architecture of a lost world, a sunken city that some have boldly called a Japanese Atlantis. The formations are staggering in their regularity. There are what appear to be wide, flat terraces connected by sheer, vertical drops that look like giant staircases. There are two prominent, monolithic pillars that seem too symmetrical to be natural. There is a long, straight wall nearly 6 meters tall and a channel that cuts a clean, narrow path through the rock. If you were to see this on land, you would swear you were walking through the ruins of an ancient ceremonial complex. The most compelling argument for a human hand comes from the sheer concentration of these seemingly artificial features in one location. Proponents point to the twin round holes bored into a rock platform, holes that align perfectly with the solstice sun, suggesting a possible astronomical purpose. They highlight a rock that looks uncannily like a human face and another formation that resembles a crude turtle, potential examples of ancient megalithic art. The suggestion is that this was a sacred site, perhaps a temple complex, built on land that later sank beneath the waves during a catastrophic seismic event thousands of years ago. If true, it would rewrite the history of human civilization in the Pacific, pushing back the clock on advanced building and seafaring cultures in this region by millennia. Yet, the opposing view from mainstream geologists is equally powerful. They argue that the sandstones of Yonaguni are crisscrossed with natural vertical and horizontal fractures. Over thousands of years, the powerful ocean currents have relentlessly eroded along these weak lines, exploiting the cracks to break the rock into blocks with remarkably straight edges and flat planes. The seemingly perfect 90-degree angles and tiered formations are simply the result of this natural quarrying process, a common phenomenon in this type of rock known as sheet jointing. The solstice-aligned holes could be nothing more than places where softer rock inclusions were scoured out by water. The human face and turtle shape are classic examples of pareidolia, our brain's innate tendency to see familiar patterns, especially faces, in random shapes. There is no pottery, no tools, no charcoal from fires, none of the cultural debris that always surrounds human habitation. The entire structure is made from the living bedrock, with no evidence of cut stones being moved and assembled. So what are we truly looking at? Is it the haunting, submerged skeleton of a forgotten civilization, its story erased by the rising sea? Or is it a magnificent geological accident, a masterpiece of natural sculpture that perfectly mimics the works of humanity? The Yonaguni monument sits in that tantalizing space between what we can explain and what we feel, a silent, underwater riddle that challenges us to decide where nature's art ends and human history begins. A different kind of ghost town lies frozen along the fjords of Greenland. For nearly 500 years, two Norse settlements thrived on this harsh frontier, a vibrant European society living at the very edge of the known world. They built stone churches with bronze bells, raised dairy cattle, and traded walrus ivory with kings back in Norway. Then, around the turn of the 15th century, every last settler vanished. When a ship finally arrived to check on the colony after years of isolation, the crews found only empty houses, silent farmsteads, and the bones of livestock scattered in the fields. There was no evidence of a great battle, no mass grave, no final message. An entire community had simply dissolved into the Arctic silence. So what happened to these hardy people who had weathered centuries of Greenland's challenges? The most compelling suspect is the climate itself. The period of their disappearance coincides with the dawn of the Little Ice Age, a centuries-long dip in global temperatures. What was once a marginally farmable land became brutally cold. The growing seasons shortened until it became impossible to reliably harvest hay to feed livestock through the endless winters. Sea ice, thick and impassable, began to choke the fjords for more of the year, blocking the trade routes that were their economic lifeline. They were starving in the dark, cut off from the world, slowly freezing in their own homes. Yet climate alone may not tell the whole story. The Norse were not alone in Greenland. The Thule people, the ancestors of the modern Inuit, were moving south along the coast. These two cultures existed in parallel, but their relationship remains a mystery. Did they trade peacefully, or was there conflict over the dwindling resources? The Norse sagas mention skirmishes with people they called the Skraelings. Were the settlers, weakened by malnutrition, eventually overwhelmed? Archaeological evidence is scant, showing no clear signs of a violent end, but tension and the constant threat of conflict could have made an already precarious existence unbearable. A third theory suggests a quieter, more human fate. Perhaps there was no single catastrophe. maybe family by family, they made a rational choice to leave. As conditions worsened, ships from Iceland or Norway became their only hope. They may have packed what they could and sailed away, abandoning their stone manners to the wind and snow, choosing to reintegrate into the societies their ancestors had left behind centuries before. This theory of a gradual exodus paints a poignant picture of a dream abandoned, of a people who finally turned their backs on the new world and went home. The silence they left behind is a profound puzzle. It is a story not of a sudden apocalypse, but of a slow, grinding fade to black, a community that simply could not hold on against the converging forces of a changing world. There is a sound in the desert that only a chosen few can hear. In the high, thin air of Taos, New Mexico, a persistent, low-frequency hum troubles the silence for roughly 2% of the local population. It is not a loud noise, but a constant, invasive droning, like a distant diesel engine idling forever just beyond the horizon. For those who perceive it, the Taos hum becomes an inescapable part of their reality, a phantom vibration that can erode sleep and sanity. The scientific hunt for its source has been as elusive as the sound itself. Researchers have investigated everything from massive industrial machinery and power lines to secret military communications, yet no external source has ever been conclusively identified. Some geologists propose it could be the result of low-frequency seismic activity, the groaning of the Earth itself as tectonic plates shift and settle deep below the surface. The vibrations travel for miles, perhaps amplified by the unique bowl-like geography of the Taos Plateau, turning the entire region into a natural amplifier for a subterranean rumble. The psychological impact on the hearers is profound and deeply personal. They often report feeling isolated, dismissed as overly sensitive or even delusional by friends, family, and doctors who cannot perceive the sound they find so maddening. The hum becomes a private torment, a sensory ghost that follows them into their homes and their beds, a constant reminder that their experience of the world is fundamentally different. This phenomenon is not unique to Taos. Similar unexplained hums have been reported in places as far-flung as Bristol in England and Largs in Scotland, each one creating its own community of frustrated listeners. What if the source is not a single thing, but a confluence of factors? Perhaps certain individuals possess a unique sensitivity to a specific range of low-frequency sound, an auditory fingerprint that makes them antennas for the quietest vibrations of our planet, whether they are made by machines, geology, or something else entirely. The hum is a reminder that the map of our reality is still incomplete, and that some mysteries are not seen but heard in the relentless quiet of the night. These quiet whispers from our past are not just forgotten footnotes, they are the very threads that remind us history is a story still being told. From the depths of the ocean to the silence of the desert, from the gears of an ancient computer to the single word carved on a tree, these mysteries challenge our certainty. They prove that our world is layered with secrets and that the map of human achievement is far from complete. Each enigma is a question mark etched in stone, metal, or memory, urging us to look closer at the shadows of time. What forgotten tale captured your imagination the most? Was it the silent stones of Karnak, the sunken geometry of Yonaguni, or the ghostly hum of Taos? Share your own favorite historical mystery in the comments below, the one that keeps you wondering late at night. If these whispers of sleepy history have stirred your curiosity, consider subscribing. Our journey into the world's deepest secrets has only just begun.